I said a woman has already won the US presidency. We do not need a male savior. And the reason I even brought this stuff into gender is because a lot of people are thinking that way. Oh, a woman can't win. So a friend of mine, another right-winger, Percy, replied and says, actually, the Constitution of the United States is an integral part of this constitutional republic. The US Constitution didn't fail because I said the United States Constitution failed by allowing Trump to win even though 3 million more people wanted somebody else. So he's telling me now, no, the Constitution did not fail. How great is it? We have still survived 3 years of lies, a Russian hoax, and an attempt by the DOJ to first prevent a fair election and then to change the results of an election. We're on the verge of seeing just how bad the DNC and DOJ were. You know, he's bought the Kool-Aid. I said, no, the Constitution failed at democracy. One person, one vote. We now have minority rule in this country. This is not debatable, so stop it. That's what I told Percy. And of course, Mr. Ledoux had to bring his part in. You know, he's a constitutionalist, so he says, no, we started the game with agreed upon rules. Now you want to argue after y'all lost. Pathetic. Don't like it? Change the Constitution. But you sound like a whiny bitch crying that you lost and wanting to change the rules after the game. Oh, wow, I just love that. You know, he thought he had me there, right? Because, yes, he's right. The rules are a part of the Constitution. So he thinks he's right. But he's wrong. Before that, he said, oh, and America was not formed as a true democracy, so stop trying to argue that it was. And you know what? The brother's right again. America was never formed as a true democracy. It was formed as a constitutional republic where majority doesn't necessarily rule. He's right. But this is where we, the people, come in. I replied, we started no game and was not privy of its making by a very few. It was imposed. Now we intend to make it fair for all. Here's what I'm talking about, people. Everybody you hear now, the corporations do. The Republicans do. Some Democrats do. Say what? Oh, we need to follow the Constitution. That's the law of our land, and they're right. It's the law of the land. But here's the kicker, people. This great law of the land, this great Constitution of ours was not created by the people. It was created by a few. It was imposed by a few. So anybody who tries to make you look belittled because you said, I don't particularly like the Constitution. I mean, the Constitution does not reflect much of who we are. So anybody wants to be going out there saying, oh, I'm a strict constitutionalist and I want to. Remember, the Constitution was a whole small group of landowners that got out there and wrote it up, and then they've had fights with other people in several states, and they came up with agreements, and all these guys, a small number of them having nothing to do with the population, asking no questions of the population, asking nothing, no plebiscite, nada, niet. They decided that this is what the Constitution of the United States was going to be, and then they decided to make a change in this Constitution was going to require all these big difficulties to do it. And even at those times they had those difficulties to do it, very few people could vote. That Constitution was not written for women. That Constitution was not written for black people. That Constitution was not written for white people without property. Don't you ever, my brothers and my sisters, I mean all of you, don't ever allow them to use the Constitution as a hammer on you that's saying you cannot do this to a corporation because it's unconstitutional. You cannot do this because it's unconstitutional. Because that Constitution was created to maintain the power of a few with the semblance of democracy for others. Remember that. Before anybody tells you anything and keeps saying how constitutionalist they are and how the Second Amendment has to be immaculate and all of that, remember that. We are all fighting a constitution that was created by a very few, an elite few that cared not a damn thing about you. You would have been, most of us in American society today, irrespective of ethnicity, race, or religion or anything, are nobodies relevant to that Constitution. And until we understand that intrinsically, we don't have power. When you are educated, when you understand how this creation And by the way, I want to talk to my brothers and sisters that are immigrants because a lot of us, you know, I'm an immigrant myself, originally from Panama. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, who the hell are you to come over to our country and tell us what to do?" Well, you came over here, killed off all the Indians, brought my people over to this hemisphere, brought the Chinese over to this hemisphere, brought all these folks over here to build this great country. I'll be damned if I don't feel 100% American, 100% entitled to all that this country has to offer, 100% entitled to have to pay the taxes to support this country. Every immigrant that comes over here that is able to get over here. I'm going to take this call because I have a hunch this is my good friend, my right-wing gun-touting constitutionalist. My brother from Skype, come on in.
My man, in addition to being all but an out-and-out communist, you are a psychic.
Aha! Who am I speaking to?
You're speaking
this
to
is
Larry,
Larry.
sir.
Larry, my brother Larry.
Yes.
Let me bring you in
Yes,
correctly,
sir.
brother. Larry is my right-wing gun-touting Second Amendment brother, and I love him, but he's going to disagree with me. Talk to me.
I'm not going to disagree. In fact, I'm going to compliment you on the fact that you are in the open. And one thing we forward artillery observers used to love was to see the enemy in the open so we could fire for effect on them and really do them a job. You, sir, have openly declared your hostility to the Constitution.
Yes, sir.
And now that that is clear, we can really have a discussion about it.
Thank you, my brother.
And I would submit to you that since you have, in fact, declared hostility to the Constitution by saying it was not inclusive of certain peoples, which admittedly it was not, you neglected to mention the fact that the delegates to the Constitution were chosen mostly by vote in the respective colonies when they were sent to the Constitution
Only
Convention. So you had that democratic,
my dear brother,
democratic element there.
My dear brother, I studied in Panama. The good thing about other countries around the world, my dear brother, is that we have to study the history of all the major countries around the world. So whereas we had Panamanian history, we also had to have American history. So you are correct that the delegates were voted upon by the people who had land who could vote. Continue.
Sir, well, no, sir. Property did not mean land. It simply meant that you had the means to provide a living. So if you were a saddle maker and you had the tools to provide a living for yourself as a saddle maker or as a blacksmith, that would count in most of the colonies as proof of being eligible to vote.
If you were not
it wasn't
black.
just real estate. It wasn't just real estate.
If you were not black, my brother, if you were not black, if you were not an indentured servant, if you were not, don't let me go and enumerate them, my brother, but continue, sir.
All right, well, sir, I mean, I appreciate the way you're attempting to distort the history, but I think we need to put a precise face on it.
Sure.
Okay, so we can get a better context.
Yes,
no,
sir.
it wasn't the way it is today, where illegal aliens can vote in many places. No, it wasn't that way, but it was far from the portrait you were trying to paint.